Yeah, we back. Now, today's video is going to be a follow-up video to one I dropped last week. Two videos, actually. The first one, France reveals 2025 plan for Africa. And in that video, I was reacting to a speech that Emmanuel Macron was giving to the French ambassadors, where he spoke about his foreign policy in Africa for the next year. And that speech definitely caused some controversy out in the atmosphere, right? A lot of inflammatory remarks that were made, a lot of condescending arrogance throughout his speech, so much so that the Prime Minister of Senegal, as well as the spokesperson for the government of Chad, had to come out and give a response on the same day. And I did a video on that as well, entitled Senegal and Chad Clap Back at Macron's Disrespectful Speech. Go check those videos out after this one. But anyways, to jog your memory, let's jump into some of them articles. Take a look up on the screen. Macron's claim that Africans failed to say thank you for French military aid sparks outrage. Now, yes, during the speech, President Macron had said that African nations, specifically those in the Sahel that drove the French military out, he said they forgot to say thank you for our assistance in the fight against terrorism. They forgot to show gratitude for our noble contributions. And he went even further and said that without us, the French military, there would be no states in the Sahel. There would be no AES. There would be no Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. The only reason they exist is because we intervened militarily to save the day. Yes, that's what he said. Now, keep in mind, the only reason there's terrorism in the Sahel is because it's a residual effect. It's a ripple effect of what happened after the fall of Gaddafi. And we all know how Gaddafi fell. The Western powers collaborated to topple the regime of Gaddafi, which then planted the seed for terrorism to spread throughout the region, which then planted the seed for instability to spread throughout the region. So France, along with its Western collaborators, the reason why terrorism even exists is because of what they did, is because of the mess they made. But they said they forgot to say thank you and show gratitude for our noble contribution in the fight against terrorism. African governments have criticized a speech by French President Emmanuel Macron in which he said that some leaders showed ingratitude for the deployment of his nation's troops in the Sahel in battling Islamist extremism. Macron told French ambassadors at a conference in Paris on Monday that the Sahel nations, beset by civil conflicts involving extremism, only remain sovereign because of the deployment of the French forces. Now, like I said before, the only reason terrorism even exists is because of France and her allies. And not only that, but all the major military victories, all of the major military breakthroughs only occurred after the French military was told to leave. It was only after the French military was told to leave that is when you began to see major terrorist leaders being assassinated, major terrorist leaders being arrested. But when the French military was stationed in the region for close to a decade, we didn't see any progress being made in the so-called fight against terrorism. But Emmanuel Macron will have you believe that the black man is ungrateful. The black man has showed ingratitude. Anyways, let's continue. The French leader blamed the exit of his country's forces from the region on successive coups. We left because there were coups d'etats. We were there at the request of sovereign states that had asked France to come. From the moment there were coups d'etats, and when people said that our priority is no longer to fight against terrorism, France no longer had a place there because we are not the auxiliaries of putschists, so we left. Now, putschists is basically individuals who overthrow the government by the force of arms. So he says, because these men decided to overthrow the government, we decided to leave because we are not going to collaborate with individuals who trample on the so-called values of democracy. Now, we already know that's a lie. We already know that's some BS because the president in Gabon, who last year came to power through the force of arms, right? The cousin of the previous dictator who was in power, right? For whatever reason, Emmanuel Macron has no problem collaborating with this guy, working with this guy, signing deals with this guy, inviting this guy to the Élysée Palace for a state visit. But at the same time, he'll have you believe that we don't collaborate with those who trample on the so-called values of democracy, right? As if the French government is the pinnacle of morality. But no, that's not the case. You don't collaborate with those who are not cooperative with your economic and geopolitical interests. Because I guarantee, if General Chiani, the president of Niger, woke up tomorrow and gave you a phone call and said, listen, bro, I want to give you access to the uranium mines once again. I want to open up lines of communication and do business once again. I guarantee you would be sending a delegation to Niger first thing in the morning, right? All of your so-called morality and speeches about democracy, you would throw that in the garbage as long as General Chiani was open to collaborating and doing business and opening lines of economic partnership with the French government. I guarantee you would forget all about your so-called values about democracy and you would go right back to getting to the money because that's what it is. So please Save us the cliche speeches about democracy. Trust me, we're not interested. Because out one side of your mouth, you'll lecture the black man about democracy, but then you'll have a state visit with the president of Cameroon, Paul Biya, right? So-called democracy, right? But Paul Biya has been the president of Cameroon for over 40 years, right? What is democratic about the administration of Paul Biya? But you have no problem with the administration of Paul Biya because Paul Biya is cooperative with French economic and geopolitical interests. So suddenly, due to that fact, you are suddenly okay with the fact that this man has been in power for over 4 decades. But you want to lecture the black man about democracy. Ha! Please. Now, anyways, let's get into the topic of conversation for today. So Ibrahim Traore has also responded. He came out and made a statement in response to Emmanuel Macron's speech to the ambassadors, right? So, you know, first it was the Prime Minister of Senegal, then it was a spokesman for the government in Chad. Now Ibrahim Traore is making his own response. So I'm going to come in and out with my commentary, run the footage. I'll be right back.
When I recently take Emmanuel Macron's statements about Africa, and well, every aware African should then understand very quickly everything he was able to tell us and what that means. General Chani recently mentioned a change in tactics or strategy of the French forces in Africa. I think he came to confirm it. It is about dissolving and maintaining a base arrangement. Emmanuel Macron said it so well that we can only thank him for this sincerity. Even if some wanted to pull the wool over their people's eyes, reality eventually catches up too.
Now, in that section of the speech, Ibrahim Traore reiterates the statements made by Emmanuel Macron, talking about how the French military presence in certain countries is simply going to go underground, right? It's simply going to move to a more clandestine, undercover arrangement. For example, like in Benin, we spoke about how there was a French military aircraft flying through Benin airspace back on the 30th of December. Now, in Benin, there's no traditional French military base, right? The French government and the government in Benin will both tell you there is no traditional French military base here. But obviously, there's a French military presence because, as you can see, French military aircrafts have permission to navigate through Benin airspace. Now, I don't know what they were coming to do. I don't know if they were coming to drop something off. I don't know if they were coming to pick something up. But as you can see, French military aircraft landed in Benin on the 30th of December at 4 p.m. And if you remember, during Emmanuel Macron's speech to the ambassadors, he had mentioned how the military partnership between France and Benin is extraordinary. It's unprecedented, right? So, you know, something to point out there. And also in this speech, Ibrahim Traore gave a shout out to President Chiani because during President Chiani's bombshell interview, I did a video on that as well. His bombshell interview back on Christmas Day, President Chiani had mentioned about these clandestine French military operations happening over the border in Benin. And also, the border between Niger and Benin has remained closed over the past year and a half. The military government in Niger has kept the border closed between Niger and Benin because they believe that there's some French military presence happening on the other side of the border, of which they don't feel comfortable opening the border. Now, let's continue.
They won't leave certain countries. They just dissolve the setup. You won't see them in bases anymore. But in the embassies, they will be there. They will form security companies to secure their companies that exist in those countries. But the soldiers will be there. You will not see them in uniform or gathered in bases anymore. That's all it means. They will reorganize, but will be there. It doesn't matter much to us, one might say. But all we know is that if you want a break from these imperialist forces, it's simple, we denounce the agreements. Everything starts from there. I think the example of Chad in any case is tangible. They started by denouncing the agreements. Otherwise, if we do not denounce the agreements, just saying that the bases leave, we did nothing. Because the problem lies in the colonial defense agreements that have been signed since independence.
Now, in this segment of the speech, Ibrahim Traore expands upon the French foreign military policy, basically saying that you're no longer going to see them in traditional military bases, but instead they're going to form private security companies, right? Private military contractors working in the service and under the pay of the French government. Like he said, they're going to reorganize, but they're still going to be there. And in fact, that's exactly what Emmanuel Macron had said also. He said, we're not being driven out of Africa. We are simply reorganizing our strategy. But one thing that stuck out to me is when Ibrahim Traore had said that if you want to break from these imperialist forces, then you have to break the military agreements, right? It's not simply enough to just, tell the French military to evacuate the national territory. You have to break the military defense agreement, right? You have to tear up the agreement altogether. And that was my biggest criticism when the president of Ivory Coast had came out with his statement, right? When Alassane Ouattara came out and said, oh, the French military is leaving the national territory. I was like, bro, stop lying, bro. Please stop. Because I know you did not break the military defense agreement. I know you did not tear up the military cooperation agreement. So stop acting like you kicked out the French military. Stop it. I knew he was lying. In the case of Ivory Coast, that is simply like Emmanuel Macron said, we are simply reorganizing. We are transitioning from traditional military bases to private security companies to undercover clandestine operations. Ivory Coast did not kick out the French. Alassane Ouattara was lying. Alassane Ouattara was lying. Now, in the case of Chad, I believe that Chad actually was sincere because they actually terminated the military cooperation agreement. Take a look up on the screen. Chad cuts military agreement with France altogether, right? They denounced the military agreements altogether, right? Same thing with Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso confirms it has ended the French military accord, right? Same thing with Mali. The military government breaks the defense accords with France, right? Same thing with Niger. The Niger military government revokes the military pact with France. It's not simply enough to demand the French military to leave the country. You have to tear up the defense agreement altogether. That's what Ibrahim Traore was talking about. You have to destroy the agreement, terminate the agreement. Now let's continue.
They are the ones who are supposed to dictate the policy. They are the ones who tell us how many to recruit, when to recruit, and what to do with them. They are in the schools to tell us how to train them and so on. As long as these military advisors are there, you are not independent. Your army will just look like an army that's there to do parades, a circus. But when war comes, you will realize that the parade is one thing, but war is another thing.
Now, in this segment of the speech, Ibrahim Traore reiterates the incompetence of the French military. Like I said, when the French military was deployed in the region, there weren't any major military victories against the terrorists, right? There weren't any major breakthroughs in the fight against terrorism, right? And like Ibrahim Traore had said, under these military cooperation agreements, where France served as your main military partner, right, in terms of supplying you with weapons and training your military, he said that basically France doesn't really build up your military in any valuable way, in any meaningful way. The only military you're going to have partnering with France is basically a military that is fit for military parades, but that's about it, right? In terms of getting on a battlefield and doing battle against other adversaries, the French military is not going to help you in that department, right? Your military is simply for decoration, essentially, right? In order to justify their presence in the region. Because if they actually build up your military capacity, then they will no longer be needed on the national territory, right? So in order to justify their presence, they make sure to keep your militaries under-equipped, underfunded, under-trained, under-armed, and incompetent and unable to stand on its own 2 feet. But as we can see, as soon as we told the French military, go home, it's time to go home, now all of a sudden we got high-tech drones launching airstrikes against the terrorists, right? The same military technology the French refused to sell us when they were our so-called military partners. But then Emmanuel Macron will turn around and say that we forgot to say thank you. Emmanuel Macron will turn around and say that we displayed ingratitude. But like Ibrahim Traore said, the military parade is one thing, but getting on that battlefield during wartime, during combat, that's something else. That's another thing. Now, let's get back into it. Let's continue.
But on top of that, he also insulted all Africans in his remarks. There is a part that caught my attention, where he talked about ingratitude. And that ingratitude is a non-communicable disease to humans. Being human, our ingratitude is not communicable to him. This is how this man views Africa, views Africans. We are not human in his eyes. Maybe he's the one who is not human. He doesn't consider himself in the class of humans. But if anyone is truly ungrateful, it's him. I think that if he is not an atheist and he prays every morning when he wakes up and prays, he should also pray to the Africans. Because it is thanks to our ancestors that there is a France today. He should be grateful to us. In his eyes, we must not be humans. We are more than humans. These are very powerful messages. Let him pass. I cry for the French people. But still, he is good for Africa. He is a necessary evil for us. Those who want to wake up, wake up. Those who do not want to wake up, as they say, you cannot wake someone who is not asleep.
Now, in this section of the speech, Ibrahim Traore says that if anybody is ungrateful, it's Emmanuel Macron, right? It's the French head of state. And he said, listen, unless he's an atheist, whatever God that he prays to, he says he should be thankful and pray to the Africans, because it's due to the Africans that the French are able to enjoy the level of quality of life they're able to enjoy in the modern day. It's because of the blood sacrifice and the resource pillage off the back of the wealth of the Africans that the French are able to enjoy the wealth and prosperity and power they're able to enjoy in the modern day. He says, it is thanks to our ancestors that there's a France today. Now, of course, Emmanuel Macron might not know this because in the French educational system, in the French curriculum, they don't teach real history, right? They teach fake history. They teach BS history, right? They don't teach about the crimes against humanity perpetuated by the French government. They don't teach that. They teach a fairy tale, roses and daisies type of story. Same thing in the United States, right? Same thing in all Western nations, right? They teach some fluff, BS, fabricated, fraudulent history. They don't teach about how France was one of the main powers when it came to the transatlantic slave trade. They don't teach about the true brutality that France committed during the invasions of the African continent. They don't really teach about the colonial massacres that were committed by the French government. They don't teach these things. Even recently, Emmanuel Macron had apologized to the government of Senegal because of the 1944 Senegalese massacre of West African troops that served in the French military. I did a video on that, right? But they don't even teach this in the French curriculum in France, right? So Emmanuel Macron might not know that everything you have and everything you enjoy is due to the blood sacrifices of the African. Millions of black men and women and children had to die, had to be murdered in cold blood just for you to be where you are today. So Ibrahim Traore is absolutely right. If whatever God you pray to, you better pray to the African. Don't pray to Yahweh. Don't pray to Allah. You better pray to the African, because it's due to the African that you have everything that you have today. Now let's continue.
We must decolonize the mentality. For them, there is no morality. They can label you a terrorist today, but tomorrow you're a hero. With just their words, they decide what they do. They talk about democracy, but they carry out constitutional coups among themselves. They talk about human rights, but they decimate populations elsewhere. The African must wake up. Africa must wake up. And the fight against imperialism is ongoing. I invite you to join this fight, to work so that we are truly independent, that we are self-sufficient, and that we can develop and achieve the happiness our people aspire to.
Now, I swear to God, this is why I say I know Ibrahim Traore be watching the channel. I know for a fact, because in this part of the speech, he said, when it comes to our adversaries, there is no morality. Now, if you look at the very first video that I uploaded on my channel, right? My oldest video currently on my channel is entitled, Black Men Must Understand Life is About Power, Not Morality, right? Video was uploaded 3 years ago. And in this same speech, Ibrahim Traore said, listen, there is no morality when it comes to our adversaries. Then he goes on to say, they could label you a terrorist today and label you a hero tomorrow. That's the same thing I said in the video last week, right? Same thing with the new leader in Syria. Just 10 years ago, the new leader in Syria had a $10 million bounty on his head from the US government. Now in the modern day, the United States government is sending delegations over to Syria. Emmanuel Macron, the French government, sending their blessings to Syria, right? But meanwhile, this was a terrorist 10 years ago with a $10 million bounty on his head, right? Same thing I said in my video last week. So I know for a fact my boy be watching the channel. Shout out to my boy. I know they be watching the channel. But anyways, something else that he said was, they preach to us about democracy. They lecture us about democracy, but they themselves, if it's in their interest, they'll support the overthrow of a regime. They'll support the overthrow of an administration if it's against their interests. Same thing they did with Libya and Gaddafi. Like I said before, the only reason there's terrorism going on in the region is because of their intervention to topple the regime of Gaddafi, right? To overthrow the Gaddafi administration. That is a major action that planted the seed for the terrorism we see happening in the region today, right? So these same people that lecture us about democracy are the same people that engage in criminality as long as it fits their interests, as long as it's in their economic and geopolitical interests, right? The hypocrisy is right in your face. But anyways, man, shout out to my boy. Shout out to the captain. Shout out to my boys down in the Sahel. You know I got love for y'all boys, man. I know y'all be watching the channel. I know for a fact y'all be watching the channel. So I just want to say shout out to y'all, man. I got love for y'all. Keep doing what y'all doing. Listen, you know we're going to keep our foot on their neck. Now, this is off topic, but I want to give a shout out to the homie right here, right? Now, if you see Ibrahim Traore, then I know you see this brother right behind him. I know you see him everywhere he goes. This obviously the right-hand man. This obviously the shooter right here, right? this is the shooter, right? So if you get too close to Ibrahim Traore, this gonna be the brother that's gonna lay you down, right? You see how we looking to the left, to the right, side to side? Anytime you see the captain, anytime you see Ibrahim Traore moving around, you see his right hand man right here masked up, and I know he got the hammer on him, he got the fire on him, he armed and ready, he's strapped and ready. So listen, this right here, this is the shooter right here. So I want to give a shout out to the shooter. I want to give a shout out to the shooter. I don't know your name, bro. I don't know your name, but I got love for you, bro. Because every time I see Ibrahim Traore, you right behind him, and I know you got the strap in the briefcase. So shout out to my boy. Anyways, man, it's your boy Nevercari. That's Salim back in the Billy. Yes, indeed. Cash App in the description. Support the channel, man. Support the album. Peace.
No. Feel like I'm 75. Know that your team be full of them traders. You know that can never be mine. I'm grabbing a thought when I drive. I'm back in my zone and we on. She said that she ready to come be my wife. Yeah, hoping I don't do her wrong. I gave her my word in this bond. I'm whipping the best like a lamb. I'm eating no chicken and lamb. Accustomed to call me the man. I never be up on the gram. I'm keeping that way undercover. She want me to tell her I love her. I told her I'm breaking the rules. I told her we making the news. Back in my city, they loving me. Standing alone, I'm 100 deep. Enemy plotting and still in reach. They try to make sure that we underneath. Trying to make sure that we never make it. Coming for power, come get acquainted. Coming for everything that I wanted. Feeling like Drake, but I really wrote it. Feeling like Kendrick, I'm checking names. Gotta roll up while I go insane. Got so much stress, I've been gained weight. Stuffing these racks in this Louis case. One thing for certain, I'm about to check. Keep it 100 and nothing less. Stick with the family since day one. Had to stay down till my day come. Had to stay down, but I'm never patient. Hop on the mic and I'm motivated. Hop on the mic and I drop a classic. Haters can't see me, they copping glasses. Back in the studio making magic. Got a new tape and it's in production. Back on my business, I got a budget. Staying low key when I'm out in public. Feel like I'm 75. Know that your team be full of them traders. You know that can never be mine. I'm grabbing a thought when I drive. I'm back in my zone and we on. She said that she ready to come be my wife. Yeah, hoping I don't do her wrong. I gave her my word in this bond. I'm whipping the best like a lamb. I'm eating no chicken and lamb. Accustomed to call me the man. I never be up on the gram. I'm keeping that way undercover. She want me to tell her I love her. I told her I'm breaking the rules. I told her we making the news. Making the news. Making the news. Breaking the rules. Yeah. Know that we making the news. Yeah.